Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. I hope you'll come back often and hope you'll tell your friends about us. Before we start the show, I'd like to introduce Father Ron Walters for the show's prayer. Father Walters?
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we recognize the intricacy and the beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and the artistry you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father. We really appreciate everything that you do for our show. And now I'd like to introduce the sponsor for our show, Brennan's Model Railroading.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wenky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
Well, normally at this point, I'd introduce Bob Davidson, the chairman of our scholarship committee, to talk about the scholarship program. Bob has been on a tour on his motorcycle for the last few days and sent me an email a little bit ago and said, I'm out of it. I won't be there tonight. So instead of introducing Bob, I'd like to show you a photo of the setup that we had at Al Judy's NMRA show in Harrisburg last weekend. This is the first time that we've had a video at our table that ran on a circuit that talked about new tracks, talked about the scholarship, and talked about the company, Conowingo Models, that donated 2 of their kits as prizes. So anybody that stopped by our booth and filled out the form could enter the contest to win one of those prizes. Well, we had 2 winners. Jack Doodle won one prize, and Bill McCourt won the other. Jack won on Friday, Bill won on Saturday. So we appreciate everybody that dropped by and filled out the form and gave us their email. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the model. And to the 2 winners, I hope when they finish building the model, they'll show it in the MyBuild segment of our show. So we were pleased with how this went. We plan to try to do this at some other shows around the country. So if you see this kind of setup at our table, drop by, say hello, because the people there at that table will all be volunteers for New Tracks and giving their time and effort to help us promote the scholarship program. So we would appreciate your support by at least dropping by and saying hello to them. Next, I want to introduce Martin Breckbild, MMR, to say a few words about our newsletter. If you haven't subscribed yet to the newsletter that Martin is the editor of, I hope you will. You can by going to our website and subscribing, and you'll automatically get a copy of it. Martin's working, I think, on the July issue now. So, Martin, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, a few words. No, I'll say more than those. Yes, working on the July issue. pushing 40 pages already, but I'm still looking for contributions from people and ideas and thoughts. And as I asked for, a week or two ago, featured layout. I'm looking for someone to send me some photos and some text of their layout so we can show another layout in June or July. I'm actually working on July and looking forward already into August, because we have a lot of material that's just not going to fit in July. It's nice to have a little extra, but keeping the events current and up to date. So, when you have something, send it along. I'll put my email address in the chat and let you know where to send stuff. So it's coming along nicely. I'm happy.
If you haven't seen the June issue yet, you ought to go to our website and at least download it. It's really something to see. I forget how big it is. I think it's about 45 pages. And, we've started this the first of this year, and Martin is just doing an outstanding job. And thanks to a lot of you, we're getting an awful lot of material sent in. And I think it's going to be one of the best newsletters out there because we're covering not just one scale, we're covering them all. And thanks to the people that are participating in new tracks, we're getting input from everybody. So I think that's significant. And I think it's going to show really in the number of people that subscribe later on. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to at least go to the website, download the June issue, and take a look at it. Well, now I want to talk about the MyBuild coming up next week on the 19th. And then the next one is July the 14th. And I'll turn to Greg Cassidy for this. Greg, welcome.
Hi, Jim. Well, I did just get a text. Chris has been able to join in, so I asked him, he can show the slide, and I'll go ahead and talk about it. So we're doing our double duty. So, Chris, if you can bring up the slide.
Yep, there we go.
So next Wednesday, the 19th, we're going to have our June MyBuild challenge, which is all about water. And Chris has told me that we have quite a few entries for this one. If you do want to send something in, it can be water related in any way. I think if I send in a photo of a gas station with a water bottle sitting on one of the pumps, that would qualify. But try to get the pictures in to Chris by June 16th. That's this coming Sunday, so he has time to put all the slides together. And if you haven't sent in pictures before, send in a picture of yourself to go with it. And if you don't think you'll be on the show, just send a few words about what your pictures represent or what you want us to talk about as we're showing your pictures. But be sure to be here so you can see all of the models that have something to do with water, whether they're a wharf or a boat or a bridge or whatever. And that's all I have to say.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, thanks, Greg. Appreciate the words there. And
in fact, even if your model looks like.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
We lost him.
Oh, drat! I wanted to hear what he was going to say.
Yeah. I mean, even if it looks like it rained on your model, that's water enough as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, we'd like to have a lot of people, a lot of new people, if possible, show their models, because that's part of what the show is all about. This is a modeling show. These are for people that like to build and are talented builders and brand new builders. So we'd love to see what you're doing. Before I go to the actual show, I want to mention one person, and that's Steve Sherrill. Steve at Al Judy's show was awarded a real honor. He was named the ON30 Modelers Association. He was given their Lifetime Achievement Award for 2024. And Steve, congratulations. That's well deserved. And I'm so happy for you. That's Al Judy making the presentation. The guy in the short pants with the light colored shorts is Steve Farrell.
Thank you, Jim.
So congratulations, Steve. Well deserved.
Totally surprised, totally.
Well, now I want to talk about HO scale modeling and Gerald NMR. Well deserved. I don't care if you were surprised or not. Now I want to talk about HO scale modeling with Gary Shergold, MMR. And this is sponsored by Mainline Hobby Supply. So if we could run their video first, and then Gary, it's all yours to host.
Mainline Hobby Supply is your one-stop store for model trains in G, O, S, HO, N and Z scales, including locomotives, rolling stock, track, train sets, and more to help build your model railroad. We are the largest model railroad shop in the area, and we carry a wide range of model railroad supplies across scales. Our friendly staff is always available to help with your modeling needs and to special order anything you may require. Mainline Hobby Supply is in southern Pennsylvania, halfway between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We are only an hour away from Baltimore, and we are easy to get to from the 70, 81, 83, and 270 freeways. Plan to stop by on your next trip through Pennsylvania. Mainline Hobby Supply also has an online store that can cater to your modeling needs wherever you are located. With our large inventory, fixed shipping costs, friendly and knowledgeable service, and prompt shipping, consider Mainline Hobby Supply for your next online order. Use the QR code to access our online store.
Gary, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Hi, thank you very much, Jim. What we're going to see tonight is it's going to be in two parts. Part one tonight, and next month will be part two, is a model railroad, HO scale. I'll just share a screen here. Share.
Let's unmute.
Come on, click in there.
He's a combination of both those things. He's nefarious.
Did I lose everyone?
No? No, I just got a blank screen.
You gotta click it twice, maybe, Gary.
You got to open your PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, no, don't do that. It's opening the document.
Oh.
Don't do that. It says it's opening something.
Yeah, sorry.
Give it time.
It's quite a load.
I had it working perfectly.
Well, listen, while you're trying to get this where, if you want me to, I'll just go on to the next person.
Sure.
Okay, well, next I want to introduce Clem Harris, who is hosting our in-scale modeling segment. But before Clem starts, I want to show our sponsors video for National Capital Trains.
National Capital Trains is the largest supplier of N-scale modeling products in the state of Virginia. We have been in business since 1989. We carry a full line of modeling products, specializing in N and HO N3 scales. We carry a large selection of competitively priced high-quality N-scale products from Atlas, Bachmann, Digitrax, Intermountain, Cato, Microtrains, NCE, Pico, Rapido, Soundtracks, as well as Brass. For foreign railroad train aficionados, we offer a wide selection of Japanese and European prototype trains. We are located 20 miles from Washington, D.C. in Springfield, Virginia. We are a short 7-minute drive off Interstate 95. Stop in and see us for the best in N-scale. We also have online ordering on our website, including great prices and expert advice. Call us for your N-scale modeling needs and advice. Use the QR code to visit our website. We look forward to serving you.
And now I want to introduce Clem Harris, who is here with a video, I believe, tonight. So if we could play Clem's video, please.
I say it won't play it for me. Just hang on. I'll try another. We got a problem with it. It won't play it, Jim. It was unsupported format. Please try a different file.
Okay.
Here it is.
There it is.
And then it went away again. Come on.
This is Clem Harris, your N-scale host for New Tracks Modeling. And for the month of June, this is going to be kind of a mixed bag. I'm kind of in between some projects, and I'll talk to you a little bit later in this segment about some of the why on where that's at. But first, I wanted to spend some time and kind of outline where the next few segments are going to go for that I'll be sharing with everybody. Very thankfully, I've got some vacation time scheduled this summer, and I'm looking forward to the Evanston Fremo event in N-scale. This gathering will have the most modules put together in Fremo layout, and we'll be able to run trains over the period of a couple of days. And I wanted to share with you my first impressions of Fremo. There's also going to be T-Track there, and I wanted to share with you the first impressions that I have of T-Track. And then for those that may not know, I'm actually part of an N-Track club in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the N-Scale Rail Runners. And so I'm somewhat familiar with N-Track and its ins and outs, but I'd like to kind of talk about over the next three segments the differences, the similarities and the differences in all three types of modules and how they work and what the pros and cons of those are. And I'm really looking forward to sharing the experience of Evanston with you. Part of that trip, I get to, it's going to be a boys' trip for my son and I. My son is 15, and he's a little bit of a chip off the old block when it comes to modeling and wanting to do N-scale stuff. So I'm looking forward to sharing that time with him and spending a few days running N-scale around the large Fremo layout up there. So as we move forward, those will be the next couple of segments. And again, like I said, the similarities and the differences between everything and some of the pros and cons. But I actually wanted to spend this month's segment talking about something that impacts all of us as modelers and what happens when you lose your drive or your interest in the hobby. And I'm not talking about the long term where you just give up completely and you just like, hey, I'm done with this altogether. I'm talking about the short term, and I'll talk to you and kind of have an open heart-to-heart session with you on the things that help me hurt me. So, and in the hobby, and some of the things that I find that are that lead to this losing interest for a while. In my introduction early this year, one of the things that I talked about is that my daytime job is the railroad. I'm a locomotive engineer. I've done that for the last 28 years now. And part of being a railroader plus being involved in a hobby that models what I do for a living, sometimes I find for myself it gets to be a little bit too close to home, a little too much, and there's not quite enough separation. So I have an extra layer that I have to deal with at times when I find that the railroad is a little bit more stressful or there's more things going on where I just have to stop and put things down for a while. And I've kind of been in that place since I finished up the 9653, and have kind of talked about that process and shared with you how I did it, all the renumbering and the sound and everything. I find for myself one of the things that helps me, one of the biggest draws for me to be involved in the hobby is to have something to do with my hands. To when I have to sit and process and work through some of the problems that I have to deal with as a union officer, and I have to kind of think through where things are at. Sometimes it's nice to be able to sit down and really pick at a project, and instead of just sitting in a rocking chair and rocking back and forth and rubbing a hole in the floor in a rocking chair, I actually have something to show for the time that I've spent being worried, for lack of better description, about something going on. One of the biggest draws for me for modeling is the impact that it has on my mental health also. As we all, as life goes on, we have more and more things that go on. We have to learn how to process those things, and that's all very important. But sometimes having that downtime to really be able to sit and think through things. For me, again, the same thing like dealing with various issues with work and stuff, is that having that downtime of being able to think and process and understand. And sometimes when things are when there's a lot more going on in life, sometimes it's easier just to say, hey, stop, let's put this down for a few minutes and let's worry about what's at hand. And I find that this funk kind of comes and goes sometimes. I find personally that funk comes and goes quite a bit more during the summer, especially when you're trying to hang out with friends, trying to do barbecues, trying to do various activities like, again, going to Evanston next month. Those things all kind of factor into being in that funk. And oddly enough, Evanston, of all things, is one of the things that's helping to pull me out of this funk right now of not really wanting to mess with anything, because now I'm getting excited thinking about how large that layout's going to be. And hey, I'll get to be able to run longer trains, and I want my stuff to run well and run right, as you've seen in my previous presentations. I'm pretty particular about that. So I've been going through and updating decoder firmware in my ESU decoders. I've been making sure some of the cars that I'm going to take with us roll well and have good wheels under them. Just little stuff like that. I find too, as I finish up a project, say like the 9653, sometimes I find that excitement and that buildup that gets you to complete a really neat project like that. Sometimes the afterword of just being able to sit down for a little bit and go, you know what, I don't want to mess with this. I just did something really cool, and I want to enjoy that for a while. It's interesting to me how much the hobby is actually a big help, and kind of helps me process the world around me. And I can sit down and I can look back at some of the projects I've done and stop and think about like, hey, I had this going on in life when I worked on this particular engine, and being able to have an oddball mile marker of sorts in life like that and be able to say, hey, these are I was here when I did this, and being able to look back and say, hey, this is the progress I've made. Sometimes that's a big help, and that helps me get motivated again also. There's a lot of different answers to this question of what causes modelers funk and what causes people to lose interest in their hobbies for a short while. Another plus for me is I'm very fortunate to have a large network of friends in the hobby that all are very solid, experienced modelers. And we don't always, very thankfully, we don't always lose interest at the same time. And so as I see others working on their projects and they share, hey, I did such and such with this engine, or hey, I painted this car and did such and such with this. For me, that also starts to build interest too. When I see others making progress in the hobby, it gets me mentally back on track and go, oh, hey, wait, I see I was working on this. Let me get going on this again. I'm thankful for those friends, because those friends, so many things in life, and especially as I'm getting a little bit older, we've spent time, we've put value on our mental health as a family, and as individuals in my home, and being able to have something to be able to decompress and enjoy, hands down, makes the hobby just incredible. Being able to process, being able to think, being able to work through various issues and have something tangible to show for your time is always huge to me. And the question I guess I would like to leave everybody with today is, what do you do when you find yourself in that funk where you don't have that spark, you don't have that interest in the hobby? What things do you do that help you get your interest going and help you get your drive going? What things compete for your time in the hobby? I know for me, I have a lot of extracurricular activities, doing stuff in the union, having kind of a weird oddball schedule with the railroad, plus trying to be a husband, be a father, trying to take care of my family and the various issues that we all have in life. Those things all impact and affect that. But the question being, what do you do that helps you get your spark, helps you get your interest back, helps you get that, get connected again, where you get excited about, hey, I'm working on this project. Thank you for your time and consideration today. And I know this is kind of an oddball piece, but I do look forward to sharing with you over the next couple of months the differences with N-Track, T-Track, and Fremo, and again those first impressions that I'll be able to have of T-Track and Fremo. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great evening.
Well, Clem, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate your help, and your words are very accurate. I think all of us go through those kinds of ups and downs in the hobby, and it's an interesting discussion that we've had. Thank you. Well, Gary, how about it? You ready to show us your great modeling now?
We'll try again.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's share screen. And we'll go to screen 2. And this is the Red Barrel Railroad. Hopefully it'll come up. I don't understand what's going on. I had everything working perfectly and it keeps jumping out on me.
There you go.
It must be a large one because it's not downloading very quickly.
No, normally it just it came right up, but,
It says it's downloading the Red Barrel Railroad, PPTX.
Well,
is a very-
let me come back in a little bit, Gary. Maybe you can work with Pat while we go somewhere else, and then we'll come back again. How's that?
Gary,
Okay.
Gary, before you share, try to get it up on your second screen and have it completely up on your second screen in slideshow before you share, like we talked about.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, now let me turn to Martin Breckfield, NMR, for his question.
You're breaking up really bad, Jim.
Yeah, you're all locked up and I'm not seeing anything, but I think I got introduced.
Yep, go ahead, Martin.
So we'll just forge on with or without Jim.
You did get introduced.
It's terrible. The horror of the horror. Okay. Okay. There we are. So, toolbar is in the wrong place. I don't know why it's over there. Well, anywho, so pick up where we left off last week, where we were building one of these things. And I say things because it's sort of a caboose, but it sort of isn't. But it's interesting nonetheless, a unique piece. And last week, well, we had a floor and a base with a brake system. We had two sides. We had a roof ready to go, sort of, maybe. Two ends that weren't quite ready, but just need to put it all together anyhow. One thing I neglected to mention was I actually cut out behind this big white metal casting, and that's so you can go get in there and glaze that bay window. Otherwise, it looks kind of silly. So, hey, you're just building a box. You just glue it together. That's easier said than done. It takes a number of clamps, throwing this all together, and as I say, you can never have too many clamps. Well, it's generally true, and took a few extra that I didn't plan on using to get this all together. And doorways were cut open. This is 16th-inch scribe siding, so they don't split generally as a rule very easily. When you get down to the 32nd, it can be problematic. But this is all open and glued up through some reinforcing squares into the corners, and also at the base to set that end against on each end. And these are opened up from behind. You can see it's opened up. That's a little tricky because there's really not that much room in this casting. It looks like it's thick and heavy. Well, it's heavy, but it's not that thick around the edges. There's not much room tolerance around this. So there's a thin bead of goo and some CA behind this. That's what holds it in place, but it can be glazed from the inside. It's a little tricky. If I'd thought this through better, I would have done this somewhat differently, but this is the way it came in. So pre-paint those pieces and then glaze them once it's assembled. So this is where I would have done things differently, was to maybe pre-paint them, glaze them, and then glue them in place. But okay, so it's open from the top. You can still do it. It takes a little bit of manipulation and some patience and some colorful language and some 3 pairs of tweezers, getting your acetate around the corners. And there's actually 3 pieces of acetate in here, but so much. For that, it's pretty easy to do. But it's primed with the finished color and glazed. A little bit of styrene up here for the door runner and some trim work. The roof drops into place, and there's a little piece of a little piece of scribe siding underneath here, under the roof. So it's just not raw wood there. And as foreshadowed in that photo, Okay, got to build the ends. The ends are a little complicated, or maybe not so complicated. So I guess that depends on your definition of complicated. First thing you have to do is paint this door, and it was glazed and it's in place. A little piece of header over the top of it, a little piece of trim here. These grab railings behind the end railing, they have to be put in. This corner post here is actually drilled and soldered into the other piece on both sides. Once that's done, now we can put this piece of styrene channel in place, and we can build up the ends. This is just an old brass all-nation ladder, cut down fit, soldered to a little bit of flat at the bottom, a couple of holes drilled in it for some wire, kept the holes at the top from the original ladder. I was over in my workshop, over in the one cabinet, are vials full of all the little nails that the old kits used to supply. But I don't usually nail things together using those little tiny nails, but I don't throw them away either, because when you need two of them, here's where they go, right here. There's two at this end and two at the other end. And actually, this is glued in place with some goo and CA. It's actually drilled with a pilot hole, and the nail's got a drop of CA on it, pushed right into the hole. It's not coming back out. These are two brass channels. This is a brass casting from Bob Raza, custom finishing parts. White metal wheel from who knows where. I've got one at each end. This brass casting, just a little bit of filing, and a little bit of sanding, fits inside these two pieces of brass channel. Solder the two pieces of channel to each side. That gets soldered to this base plate. Another piece of channel. One end's channel, the other end it's box. I ran out of channel. You can't really tell it's not channel at the other end. Drill holes through here, wrap it around, another hole in the bottom, some phosphor bronze wire, a little bit of solder, and it's all together. Glue it in place. The ends are done. Well, almost done. Close to done. Sort of done. There's some other stuff that goes down here. But these were kind of fun to put together, a little tricky. But hemostats, clamps, and good flux and a little torch, and things go together pretty well. And okay, this wasn't done with a torch back here. This is actually one of those rare occasions where I actually used a soldering iron. It happens. I have to use the soldering iron now and then. I'm not good enough to not burn wood with a torch. It's kind of hard to avoid. Okay, well, everything's soldered together. We got all the door supports here at the bottom. These are just precision scale parts. Just a hole drilled, dip it in CA and shove it in a hole. Easy enough. These are just pieces of phosphor bronze, 25 thousandths. Bend one end, curl it. Curling's interesting because I'm actually using 3 different pieces of tubing to get that curl just to where I want it to be. Basically, it's a glass vial and a piece of pipe, and then it's down to a piece of copper tubing, plumbing tubing, just enough to get the curl in, and fairly consistently. Drill a hole, shove it in the hole with some CA. It's done. Okay, so just back to the end for one more try. See some of the roof, and we've got a lot of the roof walk on place. These are just Grant Line parts, and there's a new piece of all roof ribs are on there too now, and it's got a little bit of paint on the sides and ends. The roof is painted dark lark gray, SP lark gray. This is just the first coat because I can see where I missed some spots. So this must have been the first coat. So, you paint it all the way around 2-3 times, just polyscale boxcar red. I killed an entire bottle of boxcar red, or what was left of one of my boxcar red bottles of polyscale. It's getting harder and harder to find some of that stuff. I could not find any at Harrisburg on Friday. very disappointed. There's the roof. So we've got roof ribs. It's got a whole new scribed section from one end to the other. Roof ribs, roof walk supports. It's all set for the roof walk. And these pieces aren't on here yet because it's a lot easier to paint this without those pieces that usually go at the corners. Okay, we're going to fast forward right to the finish line because sometimes I forget to take photos because I'm just like, okay, the finish line's over there. Get there now. Stop goofing around with the camera. Just get done. And we got done. So got a roof stack. It's old Traincraft white metal casting. We drill this out with I don't know, a 42 or something. Whoop. Come back here. Whatever drill and clear that out. These are just pre-painted scribe siding dropped into place. Some roof walk that was pre-painted and dropped into place. We've got air hoses added to the end. We've got a coupler on each end. There's some grab irons. These were problematic. These were precision scale grab irons, but they're the styrene ones. I don't know if anybody else has had any good luck with those. Let me know, because every time I tried to cut them free from the sprue, they broke in two. So figuring out how to reassemble the grab irons with methyl ethyl ketone once they're put into the holes is kind of that's a good cause for a strong drink. Got Andrew's leaf spring trucks. They're old low-bow trucks, cast bronze. The Bronze Age returns, but they'll roll forever. They've already outlasted most of us. They'll outlast the rest of us. They just keep going. And decals, I actually found Missouri Pacific Lines decals. These are actually for a boxcar. Fancy that. It's a boxcar converted into a bay window caboose thing. So I didn't use very much of the actual boxcar decal, but K4 sells these. So it was pretty much just what I needed. So I have enough left over to actually do a Missouri Pacific boxcar if I really wanted to. I have no idea why I would want to. It would have to be a suitably strange car to get my attention. And there's the ends painted up, and you can see the grab irons, the air hose, and I had to cut a notch out of that styrene channel on the end, which isn't all that hard to do. Just flip it over and razor saw, and then connect the two lines together with a scalpel. Pops right out. And that's all we're doing. That car is done. On to the next, whatever it is I'm doing next, because right now I have no idea what's next week. So any questions? Now's the time to scream them out.
Yeah, Martin, I have a question. You pre-painted the metal parts that you had glued on. I guess you used a brush for that. Did you paint almost the entire car or the entire car with a brush?
Yeah, actually I did. With a brush. Two of them. Two different brushes. Not just one. One big one, one small one.
I know sometimes when the weather's good, you go outside and spray paint cars. Did you use a brush on this because you had to pre-paint part of it?
Yeah, and also because I didn't have any boxcar red in a sprayable form. Unless I, fire up take the compressor outside, fire up the airbrush, fire up the flow quill, it's just, and then I've got to mask all the glazing. I was trying to avoid having to mask anything. So,
That's a good looking car, Martin. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Well, let me return to Gary and see where we are now. Gary, how about it?
Why not?
Gary, car 54, where are you?
Well, let
I think
me go
Gary's
to
gone.
Sherry. Gary, I'm sorry, tonight is just not my night. Sherry Johnson of Cat's Paw and Instatracts is going to be talking to us about CAD, hard surface modeling. So Sherry, welcome.
Hello. All right, let me get my screen shared here and started. Now, last week, we actually discussed what CAD was. We defined it and determined the different types of CAD. And tonight we're going to focus on one of the methods, which is hard surface modeling. And basically that's anything that is mechanical or building or an engine, anything that has a lot of flat surfaces. Now, when you're looking at doing hard surface modeling, the different CAD packages, we have basically three different offerings. We have wireframe, which basically you draw kind of like you would on a drafting table with lines, and that's all you see are the lines for the actual object you're drawing. There is surface modeling, which allows you to control the curves and the shape of the surface of an object. It's great for complex geometries, but it's not so good for milling and it's not so good for 3D printing. Then we have solid modeling. Basically, solid modeling uses primitives or basic shapes, and you add and subtract those shapes to come to your final object. This type of modeling is definitely what you want to be doing if you're doing 3D printing, because you need solid objects to 3D print. I'm going to take a look at how, and I've got some examples here showing these different types of modeling. The first one is the wireframe. And as I mentioned before, it draws things with just lines. That's where it leaves the actual model is with lines. And this is a short little 2-minute video, which I think it's a little bit less than 2 minutes. But this harkens back to the original days of AutoCAD back in the 1980s. This is how you would have been drawing then. And this is probably as far as you would have gotten back in the 80s, would have been with these line drawings. One of the things you have to know with line drawings is where all of your points are. If you don't know where your corner points are, your end points are, and you're trying to connect your lines, you're going to have a really weird looking object. And I can remember back in drafting class, I hated doing these because invariably I would have one corner off from another. But you get your basic shape. You can see where it is. It's going to be three-dimensional, unlike your old 2D drawings, because what we're focusing on in the rest of the CAD series is going to be 3 dimensions, because that's what you need for CNC machining, which we'll talk about in future segments. It's what we're going to need for 3D printing, which we're going to talk about in future segments. But I wanted you guys to see this because there's still some places where you might want to use the wireform. And that's basically what you get with your 3D object in wireform. Not very impressive at all. Next up, we're going to take a look at surface modeling. You kind of will start, and you'll see in the next example, you're going to start with a wireframe, but then you're going to add a surface over it. You can really define complex parts easily. And surface modeling, you can actually do some CAD/CAM, because if you're doing a router, you're actually routing out the top surfaces. It's routing out the top of the box. Not good for 3D printing, but good for doing CNC machining. One of the bad parts is when you put things together with a surface, you might not get the edges touching. There could be gaps, there might not be gaps, it could be overlapping, and it's really hard to tell when you're putting all these surfaces together whether or not you actually have one cohesive object. And a lot of programs don't see these as one cohesive object. They see it as all these little piece parts, which makes further processing for using in other tools very difficult. Here's an example, and I have sped this up dramatically. Another little 2-minute video showing how one would do a surface model. And you can see it kind of looks similar to the line drawings because we're starting with lines. And we're basically building a skeleton. You can kind of think of it as building a skeleton and then putting material on top of it. Here, basically, you're going to be building the framework, and then you're going to be covering it with a particular type of material or shape. I'm just going to let this run here for a minute. When you're doing surface modeling, notice there's and this is actually done in Fusion 360, which is great. Fusion 360, which we're going to discuss a little bit later, can do all forms of modeling. It can do solid, it can do surface. If you look at the menu, you can see that it's designed where you can do sheet metal, you can do, this is an older version, but you can do mesh. It's also more precise. You can see here a lot of it, they're dealing, as they're drawing this, with a lot of measurements. We're checking angles, we're checking curves. Kind of see them fling in there. Again, you have to deal with your points. You can modify your curves by different angles. The great thing is with using measurements is you can actually match your angles, which is good. I'm notorious for not getting my angles matched. And you can see here, we're kind of developing the skeleton shape here. We've got the skeleton, all the outlining done. So it's kind of like wire form with clothes on. As you see here, they're starting to add the actual surface material. You can see how they're shaping that surface to match the frame. And you can do a lot of modification here with the surface. Now, as you're looking at this, this is a surface. These walls have no thickness. You cannot 3D print this model at all. You can add thickness to the walls and your 3D model would be just the walls. But without thickening those walls, it cannot be printed. I'm not sure if it could be machined or done on a laser cutter either. But you see, you can get your nice shiny object there with its skin on, or fabric, if you will. Next, we're going to go on to solid modeling. And solid modeling is used a lot for CNC machining, laser cutting, and 3D printing. So it's kind of taken over and is kind of the main form of modeling these days, especially when you're doing 3D modeling. To use the solid modeling, again, I mentioned that it's done by adding and subtracting basic shapes, squares, cubes. You have to start thinking when you're modeling, when you look at something, it's like, oh, that's a square and that's a circle. If I put those together, I can come up with this object. To me, solid modeling is easy. It's easier than the other two forms, which I have done in a previous life. And here's an example of solid modeling, which Tinkercad is excellent at. If you're looking for a beginner's piece of software that is easy to use for solid modeling, Tinkercad is it. Tons of tutorials online. They use it in classrooms. Kids are very well versed. If you have problems with Tinkercad, go to your local elementary school and say, hey, have you guys used CAD? Show me how to do this. Which is sad because my next door neighbor who's 11 is amazing at what she can do with Tinkercad. It's truly amazing. And you can see here, they're just adding various shapes, rectangles, parabolas, an open circle. They're just grouping things together, adding and subtracting until they get what they want. And you can see this goes very quickly to create an object and very, very easily. And since it's solid, everything already has a thickness to it. It's a solid object. It's boom, it's there. Which is why solid modeling is what you need for 3D printing and most of your CNC machining these days, because you're working with solids. And right now we're just putting in some mounting holes so that we can kind of mount this flange onto something. And a lot of people go, oh, Tinkercad's too easy, it's a toy. But if you join some of the Tinkercad forums, it is amazing what people are doing with Tinkercad. Tinkercad now actually has a model simulation where you can actually simulate chains and wheels and see how things work together, which is really cool. So one nice, easy, put together flange. I mean, that was quick. In doing my research, I discovered that there are over 210 different 3D modeling CAD programs available. I am not going to present all of those. What I did was I took the list of the top 10 for 2024, and from that list, I pulled the top 16 that were mentioned. AutoCAD, still number one. It does 2D, it does 3D. You've got Onshape, which is a really cool program, and we're going to discuss each one of these briefly. Rhino 3D, love that one. SolidWorks, it's amazing how many of these I've used. Shaper 3D is one that I currently use because it's like Tinkercad on steroids. I love it, and it's not as complicated to me as Fusion is. We've got Autodesk Inventor, which is designed for people who are making things, and it has a lot of simulation. FreeCAD has a lot of functionality. It actually has model repair built in. Kind of a screwy looking interface, but it's free. SketchUp, I know several folks who use SketchUp to create their models, and it has its advantages. Blender, you're going to see Blender a lot. Blender is kind of the one software that does everything. It can do figures. It can do organic modeling, which we talk about next week. It can do hard surface modeling. It can do anything and everything. Its interface is bizarre. I have been trying to learn Blender for the last 5 years, and I still haven't got it. It's too confusing for me. 3D Studio Max, another one that's been out there for a while. Fusion 360, which is the one that AutoCAD is, or Autodesk is currently pushing for 3D modeling. And it actually has export utility to directly drive CNC machines, which is really cool. Tinkercad, which we just saw in one of our examples. Maya, which has been around, and it does hard surface modeling, but it's more geared towards animating those models. SelfCAD is another one out there. Design Spark. Catia, which has been around forever, very high-end program, and you're going to find out shortly why it's one that I don't use. BricsCAD and OpenSCAD. OpenSCAD is on here, but it's kind of unique in that you don't actually draw objects, you write the mathematical formulas and it creates the image. And we'll kind of show you that. Now, these are the most recommended for 2024, according to all the experts out there. Now, taking a look at the pricing, this is going to help determine whether or not the software is for you. And I'm going to go ahead and share this as a PDF with active links, and I'm going to put it up on the New Tracks Facebook page so that you, if you want to, you can click these links and actually see the software and download maybe free trials. AutoCAD's $2,000 per year. A lot of these have all gone to subscription based, which I hate. I'm a one where I want to buy the software, it's done, and I'm going to use it until it never runs on my computer again, or I'm going to keep that computer from 20 years ago so I can keep using that software. Unfortunately, things have gone cloud-based and you have to pay per year. So AutoCAD is $2,000 per year. There is no free version. They have a free version, but it's only for 2D drawings. It doesn't do any 3D. Onshape has been on the market and been out for several years. They have a free version, which basically has all the functionality of their full version. The caveat is all the files are saved on the cloud on their server and they are made public. They go into a library, so anybody can go to that library and find your file and use it. Well, I'm a business. I don't want to be sharing my files with everybody because I need to print them and keep them proprietary to me. So using Onshape, their free version, is not an option. Now, for the hobbyist, it's going to be great. It's also $1,500 a year if you're going for the full-fledged version, which does keep your files private. SolidWorks, this is an interesting character. SolidWorks has 3 different levels. There is the SolidWorks, which you have to contact sales. I'm like, okay, if you've got to contact sales and they got to quote me a price, I already know that I can't afford that version of SolidWorks. They have a cloud-based version, which is $2,580 a year. And then they have something called 3D Experience SolidWorks, which is $48 per year. So it's kind of a stripped down version of SolidWorks, and it's geared towards the hobbyist and the maker spaces. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with maker spaces, but if you have a bona fide maker space, you can get 3D Experience SolidWorks for free. But you have to be a certified maker space and show that your maker space and how many people come to it and use your space. Shaper 3D has a free version. It's very basic. It doesn't output high resolution models, and you can only have, I think, 2 files or at a time. However, it's much more reasonable. It's only $299 per year. Autodesk Inventor, and you're going to notice as we go through the list that a lot of the programs on here are now owned by Autodesk. They used to be independent and owned by other people, but Autodesk keeps buying them up. Autodesk Inventor is another one of those where it does a lot of solid modeling, and it has a lot of animation or simulation where you can create interactive gears and things like that, and it will let you test your mechanicals. So let's say you were trying to test a linkage that you had just drawn. Inventor would be great for that because it has that level of simulation. But it is $2,500 a year. Next up, we have FreeCAD. It's right there in the name. That one is free. A lot of functionality. It can do all sorts of things. It has, again, what I would consider a unique interface. It's not quite standard, but it does have a lot of functionality. And if you wanted, I would say it would be a good place to start if you want to take the time to learn the interface. SketchUp has a free version, which is cloud-based. It's online only now. They used to have a free desktop version, but I can't find that anymore. And its annual plan is $119 per year if you're going with the full version where you can get all the features for SketchUp. Blender is free. It's open source. And again, it is the Swiss Army knife of modeling. It does everything, but has one of the most convoluted interfaces I have ever seen. I've been trying to learn it. I have given up. Some of you may look at it and go, wow, this is really easy. Cool. Next one up, 3ds Max, which again, another one that Autodesk bought out, is also geared more towards your animation and sort of your online gaming and that type of thing for making characters. And it comes in at $1,875 per year. Next up, Fusion 360. Again, we're with Autodesk. They have a free personal use or hobbyist version, which has all the features where, well, I would say probably 80% of the features of the full-blown version. You're limited to 10 editable files at a time, but you can archive files and bring new ones in to edit. They also have the full-fledged version, which is $680 per year, which the functionality of Fusion is, it's probably worth it. Tinkercad and Fusion are basically my 2 go-tos. Tinkercad is free. It is online based. They do have a version that runs on an iPad, and it will also run on a Microsoft Surface tablet / computer. They do that because it's used a lot in the schools, elementary all the way up through college level. They have, once again, a lot of tutorials, libraries, a gallery where we can find stuff that's already done. I do want to make a note at this point about all the stuff we're seeing from Autodesk, and we're going to see a couple more, I believe. Besides their yearly price.
Sherry, I hate to cut you off, but we've got 15-minute segments here.
Okay, I've got just 2 more slides.
Okay.
Okay. Autodesk offers a token-based pricing where you can pay so much and then use it so many times a year. So you can buy so many tokens and then use it 12 days in the year, but they don't have to be in a row. I'm just briefly here. We've got the more software. Again, I'm going to put this up on the New Tracks page so you can kind of go over it and click the links and take a look at this. And my last slide, because people ask what's best, what's easiest, and all of that is subjective. So what I've done here is just kind of a few unique features of each of the software that I see lend itself most to those of us in the hobby industry who are trying to create things, buildings, and objects. One of the cool things that Tinkercad, which is also owned by Autodesk, has is it has a feature, a send to function. So you can actually send your solid model you created there to Fusion as a solid model and edit it there as a solid, versus having to deal with mesh or mesh things, which we'll talk about next week. Which next week is the 26th, where we'll talk about freeform and organic, and then we'll have specialized programs on the 3rd. Any questions?
Well, Sherry, you know how totally incompetent I am when it comes to all of this. Pick a program. Where would I start?
Tinkercad.
Thank you.
It's the easiest, lots of tutorials. Start with Tinkercad. And all the others, kind of, once you learn Tinkercad, you can make your way into the others, because a lot of the way you do things is going to be the same. But start with Tinkercad.
Anybody have any questions for Sherry? Sherry, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Right. Thank you all.
Well, Gary, what do you think? Are you ready to present for tonight, or?
I was just talking to him. He's lost everything.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to skip Gary for this evening, and we'll try to come back to him next time then. Well, let me now introduce the two Toms, Tom Farrell and Tom York. And they are building Frenchman River's kit of the Spillane building. So, gentlemen, welcome. Mr. Farrell, how are you?
Thank you for having me this evening, and really appreciate being on the show as frequently as you permit me. And it's nice to be on with one of my hero modelers, Mr. Tom York himself. I was at the Al Judy show this past weekend and didn't get home till Monday, so I only had a 2-day run at this build. So I'll be brief, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. York. So everybody see that?
No.
No, you're not sharing yet.
Oh, try that again then.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right, that should be good now, right? So this is part 2 of what I would anticipate being a 4-part series. I'll have the ability to put quite a bit of work into this the next few days. And as we said last week, this is an original O-scale kit designed by Thomas York. It's the 50th anniversary of his model making, presented by me. Frenchman River Model Works is sponsoring this kit for me, and I urge you all to take a look at their website. They provide scale models in 1/24th scale, HO, S, O scale. They have structures, they have boats, they have cars, they have detail parts, and they carry basically all of Tom York's original kits. And
Not all of them.
it's quite a boon for everybody, because these kits are absolutely marvelous. So this is part 2. Last week I sprayed all the what I believe are 3D printed windows with a matte green, just a Krylon enamel, and then I sprayed them with a dull coat, which took the basically the satin color, turned it flat, and had the effect of leveling the paint, so it had the appearances of an airbrushed component. I thought I'd make this a little Art Deco-ish, So I got out this gold leaf acrylic from Tamaya. And there's really three colors here. There's the base green that I just described. This is actually railroad brown here. It's not exactly a great photograph. And these frames are a railroad brown. In real life, with a better photograph, you could see the gold leaf, the green, and the roof brown. It's a pretty striking color combination. This is just a beige, and I had to go back and touch this up a little bit, but this is in essence what the components look like. I put this beige on a little too thick, and I had to go back I couldn't find my colored pencils, so I used a regular pencil and I outlined these boards. This was the experiment on this side, or here. I went back and did it on both sides. It came out pretty well. Then I moved to the back of the building. If the building is in essence in two parts, the front main building, and then the appearances that they added in addition. I did go ahead and paint the inside with a black acrylic flat, a craft paint. I don't plan on detailing the inside, so this is my solution, and they actually say this in the directions that I don't read. And there's the overall look. I put a little weathering chalk on there. Looks like they gotta clean those windows. I went on to Google and I searched for 1920s, 1930 window shades, and I found these. Actually, I just found like the bottom half, and then I brought it into PowerPoint, copy and pasted, and basically made this window shade with this drawstring, and then glued them on the back of the acetate that's on this window. And then before I did all of that, I weathered this with pan pastels. It's pretty much the weathered look. Now this is magnified like 5 times, but it holds up under the magnification. So here is my buff limestone, which is actually more buff than gray. This is the brick. Then I moved to the back of the building here, and this is the rear foundation. These castings are virtually perfect, but they do have a high, where the resin comes up against the mold. I just knocked that down with a fingernail file, so this is basically flat. So when I put my super glue on here, it actually contacts the base plywood that I'm building on. So there it is, glued in place, super glued onto the plywood base that I'm constructing this on. Again, I found that if I put this final piece of sidewalk on, it was too low, and this height difference would be it is a cityscape, but it would be a tripping hazard. So I put this little spacer in here. And then when I glued in my final pieces of the sidewalk, this is relatively flush all the way around now. This piece is put in there for test or for fitting purposes. So I temporarily just placed this in here. Then I glued the sidewalk in place. I didn't want to glue the sidewalk in place and then have this not fit. This is that base orange color, the enamel from the American Accents rust paint. It's my base coat. I went over this last week, and this is the top coat, which is an acrylic. There we have the rear addition, which is brick. This has the base coat and the acrylic on it. After I put this acrylic color on and it dries, I spray it with dull coat to seal it before I put on my mortar mix. As I talked about last week, I don't I don't want any of these layers of paint to dissolve each other and get what we call a muddy effect. So to ensure that doesn't happen, particularly with acrylics, a lacquer does the job wonderfully. And then to ensure that everything isn't just perfectly consistent in color, I took this light rust and the surface primer, and it's subtle, but there's different colors in here. Like here you can tell there's a little bit of light rust here, a little bit of dark here. I don't want this to look like it was spray bombed and we're done with it. I wanted variation in the color. I did it before I added the mortar mix. You can see it's quite effective. This is, once the mortar mix is on, I went in with a acrylic wash, put a little black highlights in here, but I mean, that, as I said before, that's probably the best brickwork I've ever seen. I mean, it literally looks like somebody put individual bricks in there and mortared them in place. That's a testament to the hand carving. Very nice. I did make this slightly lighter than this. The reason being that I wanted it to appear as an addition. So if it matched, that would be highly unusual because, you know, this has been on the wall for some period, and then they had the brainstorm to add an addition here. So I wanted it to look a little newer, so it'd be a little lighter. So that was the concept here. That was on purpose. I did take this surface, by the way, this particular piece and its pairing on the opposite side, and I put this on my disc sander to make sure that was absolutely flat before I super glued it in place. And I got a very nice fit doing that. That's not really purple. I took the photo 2 or 3 times. That's just the lighting. This matches this, except for when you have to show it to somebody, then it looks purple. But this is the same color here. And this is the same color. I don't have a photo booth. That's probably coming up next. But this light brick matches this light brick. This dark brick matches this dark brick. And I put the doorways in. There's pay no attention to this. There's pieces that go over this, and the tower goes in here. So I'll clean these windows up and get all the dust off of them. But I'm liking the overall effect. This buff limestone is the natural complement to red brick. I like the idea. See how that's lighter, that's newer, is the concept. Yeah, it's a nice color scheme. Slightly Art Deco was the idea with the gold. Just enough gold that it's not gaudy, but just a nice little accent. There'll be much more June 19th, next week. And I'll turn it over to the designer, Tom York, unless there's some questions. Yeah?
Okay. Can you hear me? Or am I on mute?
Actually, let me interrupt for just a second. It really won't be the 19th.
Oh.
It'll be the 26th will be the next time that we do.
Okay, gives me a break. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Tom York, it's up to you, sir.
Okay. Were the photographs able to be? Yes, they were. Okay. Good.
You're on.
Okay, what I have done for this week is I've painted all the metal details, and I've finished the roof, the tower roof. I've added the decals, and I've done some more painting details. So this shot shows the where I have added the air conditioning aluminum tape. I've added that in little pieces and just patched over the roof. And then I have used, let me see, it's, what is it? My Micron 03 black marker. And I outlined to make sort of like tar around all the edges of the metalwork.
You got gray squares showing.
And what's behind me isn't real, it's half-inch scale.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, yeah. This shows where I've heightened the look of the woodwork around the tower windows by adding some black, black lines in it. Plus, I've broken up the metalwork by drawing black lines to make it look like there are different sections of metal. Okay. This one has a surprise in the window. If those with good eyes. Those are by Model U, and they're 1/43rd scale rats. I decided to use 1/43rd because 1/48th I figured was going to be too ridiculously small to try and glue in place, and I was right. Here I've heightened the metalwork. I've gone back in and I've put a little more dry pigment on it to highlight the rust. I've put a little more green on it to the metalwork. I can either be plain and as it was stamped, or it can rust. It can rust somewhat, or it can rust completely, and or it can be painted, or any place in between those three. So what I have done is I've combined those three steps into the various pieces of metalwork to make some of it look really rusted, others not rusted basically at all, and some that still have some paint left on them. The metal is really weird because sometimes a panel will rust totally next to a panel that's perfectly silver on a real building. I don't know why that happens, but it does. The way I paint the panels to begin with, the metal panels, is I'll use silver, a metallic silver acrylic. Then I take a medium gray acrylic and I mix a little bit of water with it and I sort of splotch it on. And that gives a little bit of it takes a little bit of the silver away, but you don't want to take all the silver away. You want it to shine a little bit. And then on top of that, I will add rust and or paint. So it's basically a four-step process. And the same happens with the tape that I used on the base of the tower where it's peeled off. The colors are done exactly the same. Okay, we can go to the next one. Let's see what we have. If there is a next one. There we go. Okay. Yeah, okay. This one shows the trim along the top of the stonework. That shows that some of it is still silver, some of it is painted, It has a little bit of green paint left on it, and some of it is rusted. Now the top left panel will get a piece of air conditioning tape over it that's falling off, but we'll do that next time. The little space between the tower and the right piece of cornice, I need to cut a little piece of cornice yet and fill that in there. The sign on there is a new version. I probably Frenchman River will offer that. They are weathered signs, so it's basically the same set of signs, but they're aged to look like ghost signs. But they're on clear, so you have to paint white behind them first. And then I have gone over them once they've been applied and fastened down with Walther's decal set to get them to adhere to the brickwork. Then I've gone back and I've hit a little bit more with light, with some white over the dark to blend it in a little bit better. And you can see how the wood has been fixed on the tower on the lower right, where it looks a little more rotten there, where the metal's fallen off. Okay, we can do the next one. Okay, that's another shot of it. There we go. That's decal work. Okay. That's one of the weathered. The cream fluff is a kit decal, but it is that's one of the weathered versions. And the other decals are from another company that makes I forgot the name of them, but if you Google O-scale graffiti sign or decals, you can get their name. Those are also like my decals. They don't have white on them. They're printed on a clear backing, so you have to paint the back of the wall or the top of the wall white first, which I did not do to the lower left decal, and I'm going to have to go back in and touch up a little bit of that. The decal below the window does not have any white on it, and I like the way that looks. It just blends into the wall perfectly. And the last thing I did today was to do that protective window screen. Bought some fresh garlic, and it was in a little green wrapping of this expandable mesh, which I've cut out, and I built a 60,000 square styrene frame and CA'd the wire, netting to it, and then painted it silver and aged it a little bit. I have to go back in and age it a little bit more. Let's see what else we've got. Next time we'll cover a lot more. This week was a really hectic one. Somebody asked last time what the future models would be for Frenchman River, and I do have two that are coming up. One is a bulk unloader and silos, which can be used to unload hoppers. It can, and they unload that. It gets stored in the silos, and then a truck comes along and picks it up and takes it to wherever it's going. Many industries use this. It can be used for sand. It can be used for feed, cement, plastics, all kinds of stuff. And the next one I'll be doing is the O-scale version of the Cherokee Parts Store. And that one is going to be built in conjunction with a junkyard behind it, which I've always wanted to do. And I don't know if that'll, if you can see that on there. That's one of the junk cars. It's hard to, it's hard to show. Hard to do. But that is about it for this week. Any questions?
Now, can I just say though, that's a great little tip about that packaging that you use for the screen mesh. I've probably thrown away tons of that stuff. I never thought of using it for that. Thank you.
Well, I also use wine bottle, the lead from the wine bottle, and that makes great old car parts because you can press it on the car fender and then take it off, and you know it's another part. Plus, you get to drink the wine.
Beautiful stuff, both what you've created and what Tom's doing with it. Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions for either Tom Farrell or Tom York? Well, gentlemen, thank you so very much. It's been great, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Gary's back.
Well, now I want to turn to Steve Sherrill. So, Steve, what do you want to talk about?
Well, tonight we're going to talk about Harrisburg and the show that just was last Friday and Saturday. There were over 400 there. Narrow gauge modelers and mostly O and 30. We had our table set up for the scholarship, and I'll talk a little more about that later. And we had quite a few new track presenters in attendance, and I'm going to name a few. We had, and actually where they're from, but I just want to show people that these people are coming from all over, these presenters representing us. We had Danny Russo from Texas. We had Dan Wilson from Michigan, Bob Gelmacher, Craig Cassidy, Chris Corse from Maryland. We had Al Judy from Pennsylvania. We had the Coludos from Pennsylvania also. And of course, we had Tom Farrell. He came in from Shantytown. So we all had a good time. Friday was really crowded. Most of the crowd was there on Friday. We actually had two, I think, pretty unique activities that we did. One was a 5x5 scene, and the other was a car exchange. The car exchanges were done a long, long time ago. That was really something that we went through in the 60s and 70s. We kind of got away from that. In the car exchange, we actually had 16 cars that were exchanged, and you would draw a number, and then you would have a choice which corresponded to your number sequence. The 5x5 scene, I believe, had 17 very, very good scenes. They were all excellent, and a couple of them were even done by our, what I'm going to call junior modelers. These are young guys, young boys who are 11 and 15, and they were very good. I think we have some pictures. Craig, if you can show some of those pictures. Now, this is a 5-inch by 5-inch space. There's Tom Farrell's. He came in first place. Very, very good model. Very good model. Excellent. Every one of these is you know, their own creation. It's just amazing what you can do in such a small space. I don't know if you have any pictures of the car exchange or not.
No, I didn't get that. I've got some other pictures of the clinics and the show and the booth.
Okay. At the show, there were breakout rooms, and some of the activities where there was 3D printing going on. Ian was there painting figures. There was a layout or two in some of the rooms. It was just, you know, whatever you wanted, it was there. One of the things I did notice was there is a lot more 3D printing going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bob Gelmacher was there with his 3D printing. Bob, did you see anything that that was kind of unique in the 3D printing line?
Yeah, I went back into the room where number one, there was all those figures, but also there was a guy that had a 3D printed roundhouse. And I thought that was very well done. He made all the structural members of that roundhouse on the 3D printer. And like I said, I just thought it was really well done.
Now that was huge too.
It really was.
That was an O scale, wasn't it? Or
Yeah,
O
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like about a 10 bay roundhouse.
Yeah.
But all the parts were done, all the joists and the interior structure, very well done.
Yes. Yeah, it was very nice. One thing I did notice was micro layouts. There were a lot of micro layouts there. And I know here are my two right here. People were kind of fascinated with what you can do in this small size and area. You know, they saw opportunities to do some continuous running, some switching, a little bit of operation. And it'd be a great way for introduction to 0 and 30 in this case, but it could be really any scale if you want to do it.
The interesting thing about that, Steve, was that people were paying good money for those micro layouts.
Yes.
And there are some people that primarily probably because of time, just doesn't have the opportunity to build those layouts. But I know Ryan Vigas had a couple of them there that sold, and people like those small little layouts.
Yes. I want to acknowledge Martin for his effort to bring the banner. Martin had automobile trouble and he went through a lot. I mean, I probably would have said the heck with it, turned around and gone home. So Martin, I just want to thank you very much for your effort to get that banner there for the table. We had the television with the continuous thumb drive going. It was very interesting. We did have a problem with it. I hope we can correct that. As you can see there, there's Bob and so that table was actually full. You know, you can see we have things laid out all over the table with the finished model that was given away. So I think we've kind of covered that, but I would also like to Jeff Jordan, are you there? Jeff?
Yes, I am.
I know you had a unique experience. I know you had a unique experience this past weekend in Colorado. Now, I have never had a cab ride in a steamer.
Oh,
what's it like?
I think it's the most amazing railroad experience I've ever had. Let me see if I can get my screen share to work here. I have a photograph from.
I've been out there twice, Jeff. You know, and I've been in the last car and been on the platform. So, you know, but I have never been into the cab for a cab ride.
I'm trying to figure out how to. I have a photograph of me in the cab, but I'm trying to figure out how to share it. But it's an amazing experience. It was a 3.5 hour ride from Durango to Silverton. That day, they ran double headed, and I was in the second locomotive, which was terrific because part of the time I was able to see the lead locomotive operating ahead of us. Plus, at the first water tank, the lead locomotive cuts off and leaves. So for an extended, there we are. That's me. And that's the engineer is Kelsey. There's a great story about the engineer. As a little girl, she used to go out with her dad and watch trains. And that apparently inspired her to go on and be a qualified steam locomotive engineer. And she ran the train from Durango to Silverton, and giving me commentary along the way. And it was just fascinating to watch the operation of the steam locomotive, especially the portion where this locomotive alone was pulling the entire train, was quite a task for this locomotive. And to see her manipulate the Johnson bar, the throttle, the sanders, and the brakes, her hands just flew from control to control. And as you can see, I'm quite a bit taller than she is. To press the Johnson bar forward, she would brace herself in the seat and put both legs on the Johnson bar and shove it forward to shorten the stroke and emit more steam when the locomotive was crawling up the mountain. There's also more photos. I didn't have them. I just got them back today from the High Line. And believe me, seeing the High Line from the coach is one thing. Seeing it from the gangway of the cab is another altogether. The fireman leaned over to me and said, during this whole trip, it's important that you not fall out, but it's especially important that you not fall out on the High Line.
Wow. Did you get to
where
blow
the
the
Atlas
whistle?
River is 400 feet below.
Did you get to blow the whistle?
No, they run this railroad like a real railroad. Everything is by the book. And in the pages of waivers and releases that I signed before they would let me in the cab, it says you will not be permitted to operate the locomotive or the fireman's position in any manner whatsoever.
Wow.
But basically, on the front of the tender there's a metal toolbox, which is filled with sand to sand the flues as they're running up the mountain. And I get to sit there in the middle and watch everything. And when I want, I can stand on either side and watch, stand right behind the engineer, right behind the fireman, ask questions. Though they said, at some points, this is really intense and we need to concentrate exclusively on what we're doing. So if you ask us a question while we're having a hard time, don't be offended if we don't answer. We're thinking about the train.
Now, your family sent you out there for your birthday, am I correct?
That's correct. It's my 70th birthday, and my wife asked me what I wanted to do for my 70th birthday. And I said, I want to go to Durango and I want to ride in the cab.
Wow, what a present.
Yeah, well, actually, we spent the entire week. Came to Durango and I made sure we had an extra day in case there were any hitches. So I got there Tuesday night, Wednesday. I went down and watched the operations. I went down to the Railroad Museum there in Durango, and I went in the a shop tour, and they do a group shop tour through the behind the scenes in the steam shops. And Silverton has a very impressive shop facility. And then on Thursday, I rode the train to Silverton and back. On Friday, we drove to Silverton, and I spent the day in Silverton looking at the Silverton Railroad Museum. Then drove the $1 Million Highway. And I've done that 4 times, and it's no less scary the 4th time than it is the first time. Drove the $1 Million Highway to Ouray, went up to Ridgeway, saw the Ridgeway Railroad Museum, then came down the San Juan Skyway through Telluride, Dolores, Rico, and ended up in Mancos, and then complete the circle back to Durango. It's a railroader, and especially a narrow gauge railroader's dream come true. Most amazing trip. I took over 400 photographs, and everybody who knows me is going to hear about this for a long time.
Anybody?
We'll look forward to seeing a lot more of them from you.
I'd be glad to share more photos. I have terrific photos of them. They're models in numerous places. Beautiful. The Silverton Museum has an amazing set of models of some of the old mining buildings. Up in Ridgeway, there is a model of the Ridgeway Yard. A famous railroad author and model railroader, Richard Dorman, had built a complete model of the Rio Grande Southern. And when he passed away, his wife had the model railroad cut into sections and the appropriate sections donated to the museums in the appropriate locales. So the Ridgeway section went to Ridgeway and other sections went to other towns. And the model building is just amazing. Down in Rico, they have a tiny little town and beautiful little museum with, again, more railroad models. And of course, in Durango, there's a huge model railroad in the museum there as well, which was built by Jim Vale, another well-known model railroader.
Did you get to Georgetown, the loop?
No, not on. I have been there before. I've ridden the Georgetown Loop, but this time was strictly as close as you could come to the original narrow gauge circle from Durango up to Ridgeway and then back down the San Juans, back to Durango.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time.
Oh, I had an amazing time. Thank you. I like I said, it's something I will long remember. It was definitely a bucket list item.
It almost brings tears into your eyes when you think of it. You as a little boy, you always wanted to ride up in the cab, and now you did.
Yep. While it was happening, I could almost keep saying to myself, I can't believe I finally made it. I can't believe I'm doing this. With a grin to ear, and literally it was breathtaking.
Yes. Wow, that's great. Is there anybody who has any comments they want to make?
Now, I've got a question. Jeff, how long had she been an engineer? Did she ever tell you or anything? It sounds like she was pretty proficient.
She was very proficient, and I had seen photographs a couple of years ago where she was still a trainee engineer. And to become an engineer, you have to spend a couple of years before that as a fireman. Though I guess she came on board as a fireman after they began the coal to oil conversion. That's what's made this whole thing possible, is that all the operating locomotives are now oil fired. And so the engineer or the fireman used to have to shovel coal for 3.5 hours to get from Durango to Silverton. And that by eliminating shoveling coal, they've been able to have the female crew members and the cab ride along because there's room now in the cab. Indeed, though I didn't get that crew, there is an all-female crew. Both the engineer and firemen are women, and there's also a husband and wife crew as well.
Wow, that's good.
They're a terrific group of people. They make, I don't know how many cab rides they do a year, probably a bunch. They make you feel very special. There's a person assigned to make sure you get to the locomotive and takes a ton of pictures before the train leaves town. And then the engineer and fireman treat you, as a real guest of the railroad.
Wow. Anybody have any comments on Harrisburg? We missed you, Jeff, at Harrisburg, by the way.
I'm sorry not to make it, but the way scheduling fell, it was now or never. And there'll be another Harrisburg. I don't know that I'll ever get another cab ride.
My choice would have been with you.
Steve, can I just, I want to throw up the picture of Ian, and maybe you could say a couple words about him. What a remarkable gentleman.
Very. he was overwhelmed with the reception from us, you know, and I was very fortunate to have him come to my house and visit my railroad. And we went to Antietam to the battlefield. And he just took a million pictures. He's a gamer, a Civil War gamer in Australia. That's a big pastime they do besides model railroading.
Mhm.
And he just went, you know, he's just such a gracious person. Not, I want to say not at all what I expected. You know, some people you put up on a pedestal, and I had him on a pedestal, so I thought he'd be a kind of a standoffish guy. No, no.
No,
And
he's so friendly.
oh,
and he's so interesting. He was commenting about the gaming that he and some of his friends play in Australia. It's online gaming, and it's an American Civil War game, and they
Yeah.
enjoy it because unlike World War II games or World War I games where Australians were involved, when they play American Civil War, the only people dying are Americans, so they enjoy it.
I gave him a book. It was written in 1985. It's about who's who in the Civil War. And it's got a little bit of writing of everybody in the Civil War who was anybody, okay? And when I bought this book, it was a part of a collection from in town here, a guy had, and it had my great uncle, who was one of the officers who surrendered at Harper's Ferry, and then he died at Pickett's Charge. So as I was checking the book out, there were people in line behind me, and every one of them said, "Oh, check and see if my family's in there," you know. And believe it or not, there were a couple in there. So that was just how small a world it is. And you know, he liked that, and so he'll take that back with him, of course. But he said he had so many things he was taking back. It was just hard not to give him some mementos, you know. He was just such a wonderful man. You know, and he did very well at the show too. He said, "I'm just surprised, overwhelmed," you know.
Yeah.
And the opportunity that you had to sit, you know, it wasn't a clinic type setting. You got to sit right in front of him, one or two of you, you know, and he was never overrun with a crowd. And so it was a very personal effect of being able to experience, you know, the painting that he does with the figures. And he's just very knowledgeable about a lot of things in the world.
Well, I remember one funny thing that happened while I was with him. Somebody else was buying a couple of his figures, and they gave him the money in cash, and he was trying to make change. He had gotten a lot of American currency when he came over, but he didn't have the proper change in his bank, so he had to go into his own wallet and get out a couple of dollars. And he had some of his Australian money in there because he needed it when he got back home. He'd need to pay for the cab and stuff. And the customer said, "Is that a $5 Australian?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Can I give you a $5 American for that?" He said his son collects foreign currency, and Ian was more than happy to do that. You know, now he may not have had enough money to get home from the airport once he gets back, but he was happy to do it.
Wow. Yeah, that was just a great time, you know. And I see Larry McDonald was at Harrisburg. Harry, what did you think? I know one of the things that went on at Harrisburg was Roger Malinowski, who designed and built models. He had a company. He passed away, what, a couple years ago, a year ago, Larry?
Yeah, it's just over a year ago, I think.
And his family was selling the models that he had built to show prototype models, yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there was I forget how many he had, but I happened to luckily bought 3, but they were very nominally priced, in my opinion.
They were.
you
They-
know,
We sold 80-90% of them before the show started.
Yeah, there was over
Yeah.
40 they
Yeah.
brought down from, and yeah, by the time the show opened for the public, over 3/4 was gone off the table.
yeah.
I was lucky to get, I got two because I knew Roger for many years, and I already had his kit, and I just built the platform and the base and the foundation that was sitting on my layout. So they just came home and sat straight down on the layout.
Yeah, I
Wow.
bought one too.
Yeah. You know, so there were a lot of things going on at the show, you know. Of course, I got to visit with Tom, and that was always good. Your new name is, you know, Mr. Shantytown, right?
I'm good with that.
That way, we're not going to look when you have two Toms, you know, as well known as you two are. We don't want to get mixed up. You're Mr. Shantytown, and of course, you won't get mixed up with Tom. So, that's my name for you now is Mr. Shantytown.
That's fine. I really enjoyed that show. Besides talking to you, Steve, and Greg, and Larry, and everybody else, it's just so casual compared to a normal show. It's like one gigantic family, and these contests were unique, and the makers tables were unique, and the car swap. I mean, it's just the whole thing was just a blast, you know.
Does anybody else want to have anything to say about Harrisburg or anything else for that matter?
I agree with Tom. It was the people. I went down to the room where Tom was set up 4 times to see him. The last time I got there, he was there. Before he wasn't there. And then so I talked to Dan beside him and had a very nice talk with Dan. You know.
Yeah, I was doing a scratch build along a new one, and Dan Rousseau was doing a kit, and
yeah.
I tell you, we had a lot of people just come in, sit down, and watch ask how we build things and how I scratch build, and it's just a blast, just a great place. And
Yeah. Larry, I saw that you were spending a lot of time at Kevin McComer's table. Did you find some good stuff there?
I did. Usually I asked him because years before he had the whole table covered in parts, but he said last year wasn't a big sale. I couldn't get down last year's show, but this year he had them in boxes at the end of the table, so you had to dig through everything.
Yeah.
But I did find some very nice stuff. In fact, that's why I come to that show, because of the 3D printed pieces by Lee Davis, and he had some wonderful pieces. And then just talking with everybody, and
I'll be featuring my 5x5 scratch build sometime in July. It should be interesting for everybody. It's a gigantic stick build. It took about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was a very, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I actually dropped a bunch of sticks yesterday in my layout, and I said, just like, Tom Farrell's.
Yeah, after the show, I'll show some pictures. I have them ready for you.
Oh God, we just had a good time, folks.
Anybody have any more comments for?
I'm about done. Anybody else have anything?
I think Rich is trying to say something.
Well, Steve, thank you so much.
Rich, is you trying to say something?
Yeah, I don't think his mic's working.
Oh.
Well, you've got to break Jim. Gary is back. If you'd like to have Gary do his HO scale piece.
Yes.
You guys hear me?
At this point, I think it's just too late tonight, and I'd sit there.
It is 9 o'clock.
Yeah, and why don't we just do it the 26th, Gary? Well, I think that's it for this evening. I thank you all so much for coming, and we have a caboose for you, I believe. Well, that's it for this evening. Thank you all so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. Till next Wednesday, happy modeling.